up, everybody? Today we're going to be breaking down how to learn the entire fretboard. So basically you got to learn these like skeleton scales. They're kind of like the foundational scales or the building blocks for soloing. So you want to learn them horizontally, vertically, and diagonally. So the scales included would be the pentatonic scale, which is a 5-note scale, and the major and the minor scale, which are 7-note scales. So first you need to learn these scales horizontally on one string. So the pentatonic scale would look like this. So if we're in the key of G, the G major pentatonic would look like this. And then your root note's here again. So slowly. And then your root note. And then if you want to make it minor, it would look like this. And it's important to note that the major pentatonic and minor pentatonic are the same shape and pattern, they're just transposed 3 notes apart. So in other words, G major pentatonic is basically the same thing as E minor pentatonic, they just have different root notes. So here's G major, and then here's E minor pentatonic. And it's the same thing, just depending on where the root note dictates whether it's G major or E minor. So after you learn the pentatonic scale horizontally, the next thing to do is to learn the major scale and the minor scale, which are 7-note scales. So here's the G major scale. Slowly. And then here is the G minor scale. And then maybe you can throw in harmonic minor in there as well. So just like a flat first in there. And once again, it's important to note that the major and minor scales are the same shape and pattern. They're just transposed 3 notes apart. So in other words, G major is the same thing as E minor. So here's G major. And then E minor. And it's just because of the root note, but it's still the same shape and pattern. So once you've learned your scales horizontally, then you want to learn them vertically. And the best way to do this is with the 5 pentatonic positions. It's basically 2 notes per string in 5 different spots. And it's basically, like we said, the skeleton of your guitar solos. So if we were in the key of G or E minor, the 5 pentatonic positions would look like this. At position 1. So after you've learned the 5 pentatonic positions vertically, then you want to learn the major and minor scales vertically as well. So if we're in the key of G, G major looks like this. And G minor looks like this. So after you've learned your scales throughout the 5 vertical pentatonic patterns, you'll pretty much have covered the entire fretboard, but it's still not enough because you don't want to be stuck on one string or restrained in these vertical boxes. So the next step is to learn these scales diagonally. So there's lots of diagonal patterns, but let's just start with this one. So basically, you can break this down into a 3-2 pattern. So it's 3 notes on one string and then 2 notes on the next. And that's the 5-note pentatonic pattern right there, and it just repeats itself. So basically, as long as you know where your root notes are at, you can connect it however you want. And so here's one more diagonal pattern. So there's plenty of diagonal patterns, so feel free to be creative and come up with your own. So after you've truly learned the pentatonic scale, the major scale, and the minor scale, like horizontally, vertically, and diagonally, you'll be able to visualize the fretboard way better. And once you have a good grasp of it, the next thing I would do would be to go back to the horizontal stuff and add 2 notes. So if we're in the key of G, and we're on the B string and G string, it can be pretty useful. Or like string skipping if you use the G string and the E string. So after you've gotten a good idea of that, the next thing I would do would be to go back to my vertical positions and try to play everything in one spot. So for example, try to play major and minor licks in the same vertical position. And then you can mix the minor and the major together to create like tension or diminished licks. And there's an infinite amount of blues licks, so it's definitely worth it to learn the blues scale. Or maybe throw in some fusion licks. Or maybe some 3-note per string patterns. And there's an infinite amount of mechanics and techniques to use, like tapping, for example. So finally, just understanding how to use chords across the fretboard and triads at different places. One basic rule to remember is that the 1, 4, and 5 is always major, and the 2, 3, and 6 is always minor. So if we're in the key of G, and you take the first 6 notes, the 1, 4, and 5 will be major chords, and the 2, 3, and 6 will be minor chords. So there's so much more to talk about that, but I'm going to have to save it for another video because this has already been a lot of info. So I appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for the support. Like, comment, subscribe. It helps the channel out way more than you think. Let me know in the comments what type of long-form content you want, and keep shredding. Until next time, peace.